glad he's with me today to call for unanimous consent on this resolution. We're proud to report that we have 28 sponsors on this important resolution. Last month, the House of Representatives passed a version of this resolution by a vote of 405 to 11. 405 to 11. That sent a strong bipartisan message of dedication to the truth, dedication to historical fact, dedication to a principle held by so many in Congress that genocide is genocide. As a country, we should do whatever we can to prevent future genocides. But when it happens, we have an obligation as a country to call it what it is. If not, we operate without the facts, outside of reality. We aren't being honest to ourselves and to the world. This resolution gives us the reckoning and sets the record straight, a record that so many administrations over years have sought to obscure. These administrations, Republican and Democrats, have dug their heads in the sand despite the words of U.S. diplomats who were there at the time, who saw the genocide with their own eyes. And let me just share a couple of examples. Henry Morgenthau, the U.S. ambassador to Turkey from 1913 to 16, wrote in his memoir that, quote, "When the Turkish authorities gave the order for these deportations, they were merely giving the death warrant to a whole race. They understood this well, and in their conversations with me, they made no particular attempt to conceal this fact. I am confident that the whole history of the human race contains no such horrible episode as this. The great massacres and persecutions of the past seem almost insignificant when compared to the sufferings of the Armenian race in 1915. That was Henry Morgenthau, our ambassador's quote. On June 5th, 1915, the United States Consul in Aleppo, Jesse Jackson, wrote to Ambassador Morgenthau, quote, "There is a living stream of Armenians pouring into Aleppo from the surrounding towns and villages, the principal ones being Maresh, Satun, Hazembili, Osmania, Bagesh, Adana, Dorchal, Hajin. The Ottoman government has been appealed to by various prominent people, and even by those in authority, to put an end to these conditions, under the representations that it can only lead to the greatest blame and reproach, but to all to no avail. It is without doubt a carefully planned scheme to thoroughly extinguish the Armenian race," close quote. On July 24 of 1915, in a report to Ambassador Morgenthau, the U.S. Consul in Harput, Leslie Davis, stated that, quote, "Any doubt that may have been expressed in previous reports as to the government's intention in sending away the Armenians have been removed. It has been no secret that the plan was to destroy the Armenian race as a race. Everything was apparently planned months ago," close quote. And finally, in October 1st of 1916, a telegram to the Secretary of State, Robert Lansing, the U.S. Charge d'Affaires, Hoffman Phillip, wrote, quote, "The department is in receipt of ample details demonstrating the horrors of the anti-Armenian campaign. For many months past, I felt that the most efficacious method of dealing with the situation from an international standpoint would be to flatly threaten to withdraw our diplomatic representative from a country where such barbarous methods are not only tolerated, but actually carried out by order of the existing government," close quote. And finally, Abram Elkis, who served as the U.S. ambassador to the Ottoman Empire from 1916 to 17, telegrammed the Secretary of State at the time on October 17, 1916, stating, quote, "In order to avoid opprobrium of the civilized world, which the continuation of massacres of the Armenians would arouse, Turkish officials have now adopted and are executing the unchecked policy of extermination through starvation, exhaustion, and brutality of treatment hardly surpassed even in Turkish history," close quote. American officials, those with the credible and legitimate understanding of what took place, made these statements. They are part of the historical record. They mark one of the prouder moments in the history of the State Department and our diplomacy. And finally, Mr. President, There are 27 countries in the world that have already recognized the Armenian genocide. 11 of them are NATO countries: Belgium, Canada, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, Greece, Italy, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Poland, Slovakia. None of them have ruptured their relationship with Turkey. None of them have ended their relationship with Turkey as it relates to recognizing the Armenian genocide as a historical fact. Why is the greatest country on the face of the earth, the United States of America, incapable of doing this when these 11 NATO countries have? So I want to thank the many individuals over the years, particularly for the Armenian National Committee of America, the Armenian Assembly, and so many others who've worked so hard alongside with me to ensure the U.S. abide by its commitment to the truth and to a world where genocide truly never happens again. And in this respect, I've had a good friend and colleague who has been engaged with me in this latest effort, and I want to yield to him at this time. Senator Cruz.
Mr. President.
For Texas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm proud to join with my friend and colleague from New Jersey today in urging the Senate to take up and pass the resolution affirming United States recognition of the Armenian genocide. From 1915 to 1923, the Ottoman Empire carried out a forced deportation of nearly 2 million Armenians, of whom 1.5 million were killed. It was an atrocious genocide. That it happened is a reality that no amount of political doublespeak can cover up. In fact, the word genocide, which literally means the killing of an entire people, was coined by Raphael Lemkin to describe the horrific nature of the Ottoman Empire's calculated extermination of the Armenians. That's the genesis of the word genocide. As America, we must never be silent in response to atrocities. Over 100 years ago, the world sat silently as the Armenian people suffered and were systematically murdered. And many people today are still unaware of what happened. With this resolution, a bipartisan resolution, we are saying it is the policy of the United States to commemorate the Armenian genocide through official recognition and remembrance. And let me echo what my colleague from New Jersey just said. Doing so is not incompatible with continuing to deal with Turkey as an ally. Just last week, I sat down with President Erdogan and President Trump in the Oval Office. Turkey is a NATO ally and an important one. But friends and allies can speak the truth. And we are not honoring America and who we stand for if we are afraid to speak the truth and willing to participate in covering it up. We have a moral duty to acknowledge what happened to 1.5 million innocent souls. It is the right thing to do, and it's my hope that the Senate will do so in a bipartisan manner. And I yield back the floor.
President.
The senator for New Jersey.
Therefore, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate Foreign Relations Committee be discharged from further consideration of S.Res.150. The Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. I further ask that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to reconsider be considered, made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Mr. President?
The senator for Georgia.
Reserving the right to object. Mr. President, just yesterday, Secretary Pompeo joined the foreign ministers of NATO headquarters in Brussels, including Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu from Turkey. Secretary Pompeo had quite a lot to discuss with him as this administration continues its engagement with Turkey's leadership on the heels of President Trump's meeting with President Erdogan just last week. In light of these diplomatic efforts, I respectfully object to this resolution at this time. While the content of the legislation before us certainly measures undivided consideration, Its passage today would undermine the administration's commitment to overcoming real challenges in our bilateral relationship with Turkey. I look forward to working with the administration and Senators Cruz and Senator Menendez in holding our NATO ally responsible for its commitment made when it joined NATO, the community of like-minded nations founded on the principle of democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law. For those reasons, I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
The senator for New Jersey.
Mr. President, I'm not new to this issue. I have been pursuing recognition of the Armenian genocide for the greater part of a decade. And there always seems to be some reason why, in fact, it's not a propitious moment. Well, you know, it's like a rope-a-dope. It's like a rope-a-dope. Always another reason, always another excuse. If the 13 or so NATO allies, 11 I should say, NATO allies have done this and they're still in NATO and still working with Turkey and still have diplomatic relationships with Turkey, it is amazing to me that the greatest superpower on the face of the earth just can't speak truth of history. It's amazing to me. And so there never seems to be a good moment. Now, I've been here in the Senate long enough to know that objections to unanimous consent work both ways. And so I am going to continue to bring this issue to the floor. I think Armenian Americans, the world, and history should record who stands on the side of recognizing genocide for what it is and who does not. And so I'm not going to relent. And if necessary, I'm sure there'll be moments in which those will seek consent on issues. And if the only way is to get a vote on this through an actual process on the floor, then I will force that issue because history demands it. Our conscience should call for it. And a decade of waiting to make this happen is enough. And with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator for Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate Senator Menendez always speaking up for human rights, regardless of who the president is, regardless of any colleagues fronting for this president whenever the president calls on them. And Senator Menendez has always been the senator here that stands up for his principles on international human rights. Mr. President, thank you. Thanks to Senator Manchin and my colleagues for coming to the floor earlier today to remind this body we need to act now on behalf of almost 90,000 miners living under the threat of massive cuts to the pension earned. 1,200 miners and their families could lose their health care by the end of the year because of the Westmoreland and Murray bankruptcies. That leaves us about a month. The bankruptcy court could allow these corporations
Hello,
to,
this is Aram.
quote unquote, shed their
You can
liabilities.
see here on the Senate floor, I hope that you can hear Senator Brown speaking, but want to give you an update. Let's mute him. Okay, so what you just saw on the Senate floor was rather historic. It was Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, joined by Senator Ted Cruz, an influential Texas senator, Republican, who a previous presidential candidate, joined together and called for unanimous consent for the adoption of S.Res.150. That's the Armenian Genocide resolution. Now, last week, Senator Menendez went to the floor on his own and made that request. Senator Graham stood up and blocked that request, Senator Graham of North Carolina. Today, Senator Cruz joined Senator Menendez, and together they called for the adoption of that resolution. One member, again, stepped up, clearly, I think, at the urging of the White House. That's my initial read from his remarks. That was Senator David Perdue. Senator David Perdue of Georgia. There is a decent Armenian community, a robust Armenian community in Atlanta and throughout the Peach State, and they are already, I know, in just the last few minutes, generating a lot of calls and emails into his office. I have Senator Perdue's phone number here, and I would ask you to make a call as soon as you possibly can a polite but firm call saying, I'm very disappointed that you chose to block S.Res.150, that you chose to obstruct and prevent a vote on S.Res.150, the Armenian Genocide Resolution. The number to call is 202-224-3521. 202-224-3521. I'll take a pause if you need a pencil. To get a pencil or pen, write this down, make a note on your phone or something. It's 202-224-3521. Definitely say that you're disappointed that the senator didn't vote, actually prevented a vote on the Armenian Genocide Resolution. That's what he did. Now, you might argue, and I think we've made this case, and certainly you can too, that Senator Perdue is free to vote no on S.Res.150. He and others, perhaps a handful of senators, might feel that the facts are still in question, or that Erdogan deserves a veto over U.S. policy, or whatever the reason is. They're clearly outliers, but also they're senators, and they're entitled to vote no. So if they're against this resolution, let them be against the resolution, but let them not prevent the rest of their colleagues from voting in support of S.Res.150. Now, so please do make those calls now. 202-224-3521. Give a call to Senator Perdue and share with him how very disappointed you are. He is from Georgia, a state where among the electoral constituency are a great many very devout Christians, and you might point out that it was Turkey's mass murder, genocide, exile, and deportation of ancient Christian nations upon their biblical era homelands. That this resolution seeks simply to commemorate that. Look at it's not simply about the Armenians either, and he should know this very well. If he ever went to Sunday school, he should know that land, Anatolia, the Armenian highland, it was played a very important role in the biblical era. The Armenians, the Greeks, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Syriacs, Arameans, Maronites, and others were wiped out of that land. A genocide was committed basically to destroy the Christian population of the Ottoman Empire, and now the House is recognized 405-11. The Senate is poised to do exactly the same thing. The Senate will vote overwhelmingly with just a handful of outliers, if only we can get a vote. Now, let's look at the debate that took place today. Senator Menendez said, the facts are in. The question of the historical veracity of the genocide is not in question, even by sort of the most vocal opponents of S.Res.150, and yet the United States seems to lack the courage to speak the truth. And he underlines that point by saying, look, America is the most powerful nation in the world, the most powerful nation in the history of the world. 11 of our NATO allies have spoken, recognized the Armenian genocide. 49 of the U.S. states have recognized it. Whenever Turkey threatens repercussions or consequences, they're typically bluffing, and these things don't play out. So where is American courage? I think that's very, very central to what Senator Menendez said, and also what Senator Cruz said. I thought Senator Cruz offered extremely eloquent remarks, very, very profound, and worth watching again. So definitely, if you get a chance later today, watch Senator Menendez and Senator Cruz. Fast forward to them, when they concluded their remarks, they made a formal request for unanimous consent. Now, senators are entitled to do this as often as they please, on any issue they please. If there is not an objection to unanimous consent, typically the matter under consideration is expedited and adopted. So it might be a procedural matter, a parliamentary issue, or an actual resolution. In this case, they want to dispense with committee action. They want to dispense with a whole series of legislative procedural steps and go right to adoption. And that's what Senator Perdue blocked today. And he essentially, if you read between the lines, he gave Ankara a veto in the U.S. Senate, which is wrong on many levels. He's basically saying, at a particularly sensitive time, when the United States is conducting all this diplomacy with Turkey, let's not do something that they don't like. It's a kind of morally bankrupt position, which is saying, we will not do the right thing because the guys who do the wrong things might get upset. It's like, well, that's a pretty poor basis for moral decision making. Add to that just yesterday, Senator Perdue and every other U.S. senator accepted a unanimous consent request on Hong Kong. So for many weeks, the Senate has been debating a Hong Kong resolution. It had passed the House, much like 296 passed the House. They debated it. There were reservations about it. The White House had problems with it. Certainly China, threw a fit. They were very much in opposition to this. And they were against it, they were against it, they were against it. And people thought, well, there's no hope because China is against it, the White House is against it. And this is how Washington works. People are against something, and they want you to believe that it'll never happen until it happens. And then it happens. That's just the nature of these things. And that's what Purdue is doing, is saying, well, we can't anger China, a huge trading partner, one of the main economies of the planet. We can, in fact, challenge China, and we can in fact go against the White House on Hong Kong, right? We'll do that on China. We'll do it with the White House. We'll do it with the Hong Kong resolution, but we won't do it with Turkey. So Turkey gets a special veto here in Washington, and it was exercised today by Senator David Perdue. Last week it was Senator Graham. He did not come to the floor today. That may be because he's reconsidered the issue, or perhaps he hasn't. That's unclear to us. But in any event, Senator Graham did not repeat his performance from last week, during which he was the one that blocked the unanimous consent. Today it was Senator David Perdue. I do encourage you. If you have just a moment, pick up the phone, dial 202-224-3521. 202-224-3521, and just say, I'd like to leave a message for Senator Perdue. Profoundly disappointed that he prevented the rest of the Senate from voting on S.Res.150, the Armenian Genocide resolution. So that is pretty much what we just saw. I do recommend that you go back and watch the video. There's a lot of content there. Certainly high marks to Senator Menendez, high marks to Senator Cruz. They're joined now, I think, by 26 or 27 other senators who are co-sponsors. That number is growing, and it's growing because we have folks just like you who are weighing in with their senators. You can weigh in with your senators by going to anca.org/call, anca.org/call. And what that system does, it's another system set up by our great IT team here, led by Nersa Semerjan. That system, if you go to anca.org/call, you'll go to a website, and that website will write letters to your U.S. senator. No, I'm sorry, not write letters. This is calling. You'll be able to call your U.S. senators, and it'll customize the script based on, if they're a co-sponsor, then they'll get a thank you, and they deserve a thank you. If they're not a co-sponsor yet, they'll get a request that they join this effort in an official capacity as a co-sponsor. We'd like that number to top 30, continue moving up. It's clear that this resolution will pass. It's the exercise of Turkey's veto, the enforcement of Turkey's veto here in Washington, that is preventing it. What Senators Menendez and Cruz today is they ramped up the pressure. This is an escalation strategy. It's the first time we had one member on the floor. This time we had two. I think you can look to a more diverse, larger, more robust escalation of the legislative pressure, the bipartisan legislative pressure on the Senate leadership, but especially on the White House. And I think ultimately we're going to learn the limits of Turkey's influence. How serious is the White House? How serious are others in granting Turkey a veto? And how long will they be able to sustain that? You may have caught Senator Menendez's comments about how this denial of unanimous consent was being deployed against him, and he reminded his colleagues that it's not a one-way street. And I think that shows the depth of his commitment, and that's matched by Senator Cruz and by so many other senators who are co-sponsors. There are others who are not. We'd like to see Senator Gillibrand of New York come on board. A lot of Armenians in the Empire State. Senator Durbin of Illinois has yet to co-sponsor. We certainly welcome his support as well. I think we can see those numbers increase, the pressure increase. So days like this are part of a mounting pressure campaign, an escalation campaign that will, I am convinced, lead us to Senate adoption. What we'll have then is the House and the Senate both locking in congressional recognition of the Armenian genocide, locking out, rejecting Turkey's denial of that crime, right, which then isolates the White House as sort of the lone last vestige of genocide denial in the U.S. system. And we'll see how long the White House can sustain that in the absence of any legislative support, any partisan support. What we'll see, if we can get a vote in the Senate, that just like in the House, it'll be Democrats, Republicans, above party politics, above partisanship, metapartisan, be a metapartisan vote. We'll get there, and then that's going to essentially checkmate this White House. And then once we have the White House on the right side, we move toward getting Turkey to stop obstructing justice for this crime. Much more to be said. I'm going to sign out now, and please do stay tuned. Do call Senator Perdue and follow the ANC on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and your other favorite social media platforms. Thank you.